So, goodness me, we are on the home straight. And I want to engage you for this last little bit, particularly. Goodness me, these are the heaviest chairs in the whole of Boston, aren't they? Extraordinary. I don't know they're fit for purpose, but God. So what I'd love is seamlessly for my panel to arrive on the chairs here, because I've not met all of them yet, but I'm hoping, yes, that they're here. So if we can flick up the next slide, please, for the final session. And then if you can find a chair that relates. So in this last session, it's a grand title, Governing Innovation, What's Next? I think the real essence of this conversation is kind of, okay, we've looked at the issue of urban intelligence from a range of different angles. We've had some interesting, really interesting insights from people at the cutting edge of different aspects of urban intelligence. In this last session, I really just kind of try to put some of those pieces of jigsaw together and think, what is this telling us at this moment in time in terms of where we've got to, and more important, where we're heading, and what may be some of those key, strong messages perhaps coming out of today that we maybe all need to reflect on. I'm going to draw together my wonderful panel, so if you recognize your name there, if you'd like to seamlessly find a seat. So Abha, we're going to start at that end, and Miguel will go to there, and then there should be space for me, yes, at the end. So that's fantastic. But one thing I would like you to do, many of you have contributed a lot to Slido through the day. Thank you very much. And we've archived and collected the questions, the comments, the thoughts, and they're useful urban intelligence in themselves. But during this session, if you have, rather than a question, but if you have a message that you feel is a significant message pertaining to the urban intelligence agenda that you would like to record and say, yeah, that is what I think we should be talking about or believing or doing next or whatever, over the course of the next 50 minutes or so, if you'd like to write it down and just send it in, and I might get this amazing panel to offer some comments on that. Once again, I have a fantastic panel who themselves will be bringing fresh insights, impetus, and knowledge, and that's great because we will be further energized by your contributions. I know some of you have been with us all day. Some of us, I can tell the ones who've been with us all day. Some slightly less so. But first of all, I'm again like a firestorm coming through. I'm just going to give each of you just a few moments under our overall heading, urban intelligence, where we're at, what's next. What do we really need to be thinking about? It's almost a free space for you to offer from your world, your perspective. So if you're into finance, you might have something different than if you're into governance or whatever. So are you happy with that brief? Fantastic. So I'm going to start at the far end. Goodness me. Abha Joshi Ghani, Senior Advisor, Infrastructure, PPPs and Guarantees at the World Bank. So you spend your life in a serious endeavor, but on a Friday afternoon in Boston with the traffic just beginning to build up, an opportunity really reflecting on this whole urban intelligence agenda and maybe how you're seeing, I don't know, support for it, some of the issues emerging. Some words from yourself.
No, thank you. And firstly, I really wanted to congratulate MIT and WEF on a fantastic day. And, we went from mayors to, mobility, to citizenship, to data, and really covered a whole swath of very, very important and key issues, as it were, in this whole remit of urban intelligence, of technology, sensors, and so on. But I think when you say what's next, I think it depends on where are we now. And what emerged today in terms of where are we now, I feel that, definitely this frenetic energy, which was around sensors, data, technology, intelligence, it's kind of coming together, stabilizing, and I think cities and citizens and other stakeholders are taking a more deliberative thinking approach. And I do feel that we have now been able to actually converge around, firstly, how to use technology, what kind of governance we need. We may not have that governance, but we're at least converging around where we ought to be going. But I think the most important issue which is emerging is all this for what and for whom. And I think it was also emphasized today and is something which has become a part of the narrative, is that all of this has to have the citizen at the center. And exactly how are we impacting the quality of life of citizens day to day and long term? Who is seeing those benefits? How tangible is it? And I think once we are able to focus on that, how are we improving the lives of just regular citizens, be it in the global north or in the global south, although that improvement of life can be, miles apart in terms of where we are in the global north and where we are in the global south. But the whole idea is that citizen is at the center. And I also think that, the key issues which are emerging are keeping citizens at the center. Who owns that data? As a private citizen, do I own the data that I produce 1 million times a day? Every time I use my cell phone, I board a bus, I, pass some kind of a CCTV camera. Does the government own it? Does the city own it? Or, is it the CCTV camera which is owned by this department store, and therefore, every time I enter it and whatever transactions I do are owned by that private sector company? So I think that's where we need to come out on who owns the data, how is it to be used. And also, I think what we heard from the mayors this morning was, how do cities, in fact, monetize what they have in order to improve the lives of the citizens, but in a very, very collaborative way with all stakeholders. So we are talking about the public sector, we are talking about businesses, we are talking about the civil society, the citizens themselves, and all NGOs. So really a very multi-stakeholder approach. But I also wanted to bring in that we may talk about drones, and we may talk about a time when we might have police officers flying on little planes and surveying the city. But for more than 50% of the urban population today, I think basic needs of, does the water come on when I open the tap? What quality is it? Is it drinkable? Is it potable? Do I have electricity? Do I have access to a paved road? All of that is as, if not more important. So we need to look at technology helping towards creating efficiency in delivery of services, so efficient use of resources, definitely innovative use of resources, and we need innovation at the center of everything for us to make any progress. Thirdly, inclusion. Nobody should be left behind. Things cannot be focused on smartphones, and therefore only people with smartphones can use a certain technology or a certain service. So how do we bring inclusion? And then let's not forget the biggest danger of climate change, and how do we make cities resilient and therefore provide more safety to citizens. So I would say those 4 are the underlying guiding principles, as it were. And then we have this whole collaborative platform of public sector, private sector businesses, and civil society to move ahead.
Great, that's a great agenda there. And I'm just interested, as you sit there representing the World Bank, one of the great issues, all this evolution and development and infrastructure comes at a cost. Anything to do with cities and infrastructure, and also the the augmented intelligence side. I'm just wondering, is there no shortage of resources out there? It's just deploying it in appropriate ways to help achieve better quality cities, or actually do we have a huge deficit in terms of available finance for cities? Do you have an observation?
It's supposed to be a fun panel, eh?
Sorry?
It was supposed to be a fun panel, and I
Yeah. We're getting rid of the world. We'll do the World Bank, and then it's going to crackle by the end, I tell you. Yeah.
Well, I would say there is such a huge shortage of resources, and we're not just talking about financial resources,
Right.
but we are also talking about capacities of cities to deliver.
Right.
So therefore, one of the slogans, if I may call it that you hear all the time is doing more with less. So, technology and innovation in order to deliver better with what we have, and that may be multiple use, it may be circular economy, it may be, a host of, a gamut of things. But I think we have to start with the premise that there is a huge resource constraint.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Hazem Galal, a global leader of the cities and local government part of PwC. I mean, you do analysis right across the globe, and you see what's going on in cities and what's needed. Some thoughts from you, particularly related to the augmented intelligence agenda.
Great. Well, first of all, I'm very satisfied with the new terminology that we're using as urban intelligence, because I think the term smart cities was, at least personally, a little bit annoying for me, in terms of, how it got abused in many ways. From what we see around the world, and we have the chance of working with cities in different degrees of development, I think it really boils down to, how can government create that enabling regulator environment or ecosystem that would really enhance, the different participants to create innovative urban solutions. And parts of that ecosystem, and an important part that we heard quite a bit about during the day, is, the first part is the policy and regulations, right? I mean, when we're talking about autonomous vehicles, that's always been in question. Who's going to be responsible when things go wrong, right? When we talk about data, separating the concepts of possession from ownership, and how do we make sure that there is actually transparency, and as a citizen giving up their data, they are aware of their rights and what's happening and the privacy laws that go with all of this. So there's a lot of intelligent regulation that needs to be put in place without really inhibiting innovation. We spoke about Stockholm being, the second part of the world in terms of unicorns. I'll share with you an example that, happened recently in the Middle East. We had 2 unicorns come out of the region, and both of them were purchased by the global player. So Uber purchased Careem, which is a ride-sharing company, and Souk.com was purchased by Amazon. Should we have regulation then that would prevent some of these multinational players from acquiring the innovative competitors? Question mark. Nobody knows if this is something desirable or not. The second component of that ecosystem would link into the actual operating platforms and technologies that would enable all of this to happen. And here we deal with all the interoperability, questions, different technologies, APIs. How do you physically actually allow all of these technologies to integrate in a seamless way? And most importantly, how to protect, using strong cybersecurity, the data, so that you don't read like what happened with Marriott, that their loyalty program, and so many other examples where personal data was not well protected. The third component, and we talked about this, is commercialization. How do I make sure that if I'm willing to give up my data as a citizen, I get a fair value for this, be it in terms of access to other services, discounts, and even if I'm a private sector company who's willing to share its data, you know, in a citywide data exchange, what's the fair value for this, and what do I get in return, and how do I inform my customers about what's happening so that they also get a fair share? The last part of that ecosystem is the capabilities and the engagement. And here we talk about, you know, making sure that we have the right level of capability to actually be able to pull all of this together. And most importantly, how do you start creating some kind of an awareness at all levels, be it, you know, the city managers. Some of them are very innovative, and we have a lot of them sitting with us here in the room, but not all of them are at the same level of, you know, experimenting, becoming test beds for technology. So how do
consultants actually?
Absolutely, absolutely. So how do we make sure that, you know, there is that level of awareness of the potential benefits, but also the risks, so that we're very transparent about it? Right. And the citizens, you know, how do we bring up, you know, the level of the citizens so that they are part of the urban solutions, and they don't have to be technologically complex. We've seen basically the example from Quito using SMSs, something that really solves a real problem, going back to Abha's key premise: who are we solving for, and why do we need all of this?
Thank you very much. Some very interesting comments there, and echoing some already from Abha. We've heard a lot about Amsterdam today. You can't hear enough about Amsterdam. Exciting.
Go on.
An exciting test bed, and I still am trying to visualize all these autonomous boats bobbing along the canals, but I'm working on that one. But delighted we've got Gerbaron, who's the Chief Technology Officer at City of Amsterdam. So you've been the guiding force in trying to draw urban intelligence into Amsterdam and to exploit it to the value of the citizen. After all the efforts you've been putting in, where are you sitting now? What's it telling you in terms of where we've got to and where we need to go next in the world of harnessing urban intelligence?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, well, it's governing innovation. What's next? I mean, when you think about it, I mean, 2008, 2009, when we were talking about smart cities, and actually it was less abused than it is right now in terms of terminology. I mean, every big company in the world came with a proposition, and the intelligent cities, smarter cities and communities, smarter world, et cetera, et cetera. And they all come up with brilliant solutions that are going to solve every issue from a city. So we need to have smart lampposts, 20,000 sensors for traffic management, et cetera. Parallel to that, I mean, Apple launches iPhone. Well, at actually day one. So actually, I would say smart cities were a big success, but not in a way that was presented to us at that moment in time. Because there's not a single citizen who wants a smart lamppost. So wrong product. Nobody wants it.
Only my dog.
Yeah, dog, maybe. Yeah. Actually, it's actually beware. I mean, there's a law in the Netherlands that's actually started because a dog peed to a lamppost and got electrified. That's the reason. There's a new law that.
Oh, you're such a restricted, controlling company. You need some liberal values there.
Innovation.
So beware. Not a joke. 2 million investment for the city of Amsterdam to make adjustments to lampposts. But wrong products. When you look at it, I mean, you look from the whole thinking about urban intelligence, you want to optimize stuff, make life easier, etc. iPhones are pretty user-centric, basically. Applications like Uber, like Airbnb, whatever you think of them, basically, we argue with them continuously, but actually do exactly what smart cities promise: resource efficiency, optimizing stuff, user-centric, etc. So all this idea that cities were supposed to procure smart cities and put in 20,000 sensors into a city to do your traffic management. I mean, now we have deals with Google and Waze and here and TomTom and get their data, how to navigate through the city. Why put in sensors and cameras ourselves? Pretty ridiculous, isn't it? Also, I mean, when you start to think about governing, I mean, this is where it comes in, and now it's getting interesting, basically, because you don't want to be dependent as a society or as a government to these companies, basically. So that's where now governing comes in and rules and regulations come in. I mean, it's a matter of time there will be rules that data should be provided to government for public value. And we started to scrape, as an example, we started to scrape Google's popular times from the website because we wanted to know, he did it actually, because we wanted to know how many people were at a certain point of time. So you start to get data from a website that's published publicly, basically. And then they said, well, actually, this is our data. No, this is not your data. This is the data you steal from people walking through a city, basically, and we're stealing it back. So sue us, basically. And this is an interesting discussion. I mean, so I think, we used to do the wrong things also as a government. So now we realize that software actually is eating the world. So it's about software, it's about data, it's about platforms. It's not about putting as much sensors as possible into your city. Obviously, you need to do smart stuff and measure stuff, etc. But like the Sensible City Lab does, you could see in all this, use what there is basically to measure stuff, and not only try to make it more complicated. Basically, I like that. So that means also a different role of the government. So we're now looking way more into, hey, how can we make sure these software platforms, these algorithms are honest, don't steal our data? How can we put in regulations? Maybe we put in certification and do audits on algorithms or whatever, because we want to know what's happening in the black box, and actually it shouldn't be a black box. So all these discussions now with, should you have Chinese communications in your city, or American, probably it's even worse when you look at the risk of being people listening to your phone calls, etc. Sorry, Miguel. But probably, you're American, aren't you? Yeah. But, no, but it probably will be, but the real discussion is, why isn't it open hardware that we're pushing? I mean, we're making decisions about putting black boxes of software and hardware in a city, basically. But the real discussion is, when you use something for a public use, you want to open it, because it should be replicable. So I think we're now at the right level of discussion, actually, in all these things. The government should play a role in making sure technology, which is not neutral. Technology is not neutral. Big misunderstanding. Technology is being programmed by people with an intention to do something, basically. Data is not neutral. Data is a selection of data there is. So the government should think about, how can we make technology honest, accessible for everybody, inclusive, make sure it's freedom, they don't steal your data, etc. So now we see everywhere this discussion on, and also in the context of the, we work on with a few cities on the Cities on Digital Rights, fordigitalrights.org. Go see the website. Where actually we see that cities take a role in this, because, the burden of the questions are in cities, actually.
Right.
On the countryside, it's not a real problem with Airbnb or Uber, Amazon, maybe a few shops disappear, basically. But in cities, everything comes together, basically. So we feel the burden, so we come up with new ideas, regulations, etc. as well. So there's an interesting, thing going on, I would say. So to shorten my introduction, basically, I do have an opinion about these things, as you noticed. We're going from solving issues that are not real issues to what are the real issues in the city. So we're now starting to do, I also think there's enough money, we just spend it to the wrong things. So when we start to answer the right questions and spend our money on the right things, there's enough money and we're going to solve issues. We don't put money into care, but in health. We don't put money in reducing poverty, but make sure people don't get into poverty, basically. So we need to rephrase our KPIs as government.
Maintaining legacy.
Maintain, yeah. And in clean and not in cleaning, in safe and not in police officers, basically. So that's a different KPI you focus on, basically. And we put our money in the wrong things. Money enough.
Okay, there we are. I just want to come back to the governance question, because I'm just interested. Do you sense that there is sufficient conversation, informed conversation going on at the moment for cities to be able to be putting in the right governance structures? Are you confident? And
I'd like to talk even more. Thanks.
Yeah. No, it's what you said is incredibly interesting. So I just want to draw that, because I'm trying to work out whether, should there be some global panel on governance or something, or are cities working it out?
Great question. We should get rid of the name government, because every image we have of government is the same we have with banks. Banks are also bankers, and we don't need banks. We need fintechs.
Okay.
We need a new definition. So we need govtechs, probably, to organizations that are 21st century enabled, with the right people, with the right things to do. Because when you keep the legacy as it is right now, so I strongly believe that maybe we should redesign whole parts of the government, basically, within the next years, with local government being the interface to consumers, because the city or the metropolitan area is the area where you live, work, play. This is your interface every day. And the rest of the government can be a cloud somewhere, probably.
I'm just trying to check out whether that real conversation is taking place within and across cities around some of these governance issues?
Yeah, I would say, like I said, I mean, we started this coalition of digital rights where we actually have these discussions on a decent level. So more and more. On the other hand, cities are by default crap in collaboration. I mean, it's getting better, but I mean, we used to do our own thing with local elections, local budgets, and you spend your money to solve issues in your own city, which is great. We build a bridge, and then we do the PowerPoint on our bridge and show how nice our bridge is, basically. And then we just build another bridge. So we're not very good in learning from each other, I would say. I mean, this is changing.
That's my full-time job.
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
We need people like Miguel to help us to do this, which is ridiculous in the end, isn't it?
We'll come to you in a moment, Miguel, but that's encouraging. But before we go to Miguel, I'm going to turn now to Jeremy Kelly, Lead Director of Global Research Programs at JLL, one of the biggest real estate solutions providers. The cities are being shaped, including their augmented intelligence, and it's the real estate world that is a incredible player within that, and it's great to have you with us as part of that conversation. I know I was down at MIPIM in Cannes with 26,000 people in the real estate world. I think I saw you there.
Oh, no, I certainly wouldn't be there.
Oh, right. And it's just extraordinary, in a sense, the potency of that whole sector in shaping the spaces, the futures we have, and maybe we don't engage with those voices enough, I don't know. But interesting to get your take on what's going on in terms of augmented intelligence in the cities as we are shaping in the future, and the fact that 60% of the cities we're going to require, I think, haven't yet been constructed. So big opportunity in your sector.
Okay. Well, thank you. A slightly different perspective from here. I mean, exactly why we at JLL have created that cities research program, a multi-year program to better understand urban futures and city competitiveness through the lens of the real estate market, and to assess the role of real estate in the very success or even failure of our cities. And the whole pretext of the research that we're doing is based on the fact that real estate is a major contributor and a driver of successful innovation-based economies. And so what we've been trying to do is to get under the skin of this relationship between real estate and city dynamics, because when most people think about real estate and its impact on cities, they think of impressive skylines or supersized schemes or iconic architecture, but the true value of real estate is about providing the infrastructure and the framework for allowing businesses to collaborate, to create, to even create a bit of chaos, to collide, to create entrepreneurship, and to build innovation, whilst importantly, as we've heard today, improving the quality of life for its citizens in a transparent way. And a piece of research that we're just working on at the moment that is relevant to today's conversation is the work that we're doing on innovation geographies, where we are looking at 110 cities worldwide, and just a very sort of summary of that is that it's highlighting that the geography of innovation is changing very fast, that there are in fact very different models in that route to creating a successful innovation-based economy, and some cities have are much better equipped and are more agile and have the aspiration to move into the innovation-based economy than others. And if I sort of think about the rankings that we've created on the innovation geographies, the top ranks are dominated by the familiar roll call of cities: Boston, New York, San Francisco, as well as Amsterdam, Stockholm, Berlin and London, underpinned by anchor universities like KTH and MIT and vibrant startup scenes. But what I think is really interesting from this research that we're doing is that we're seeing a real tilt, a shift in the balance of the geography of innovation eastwards towards Asia Pacific. And maybe that's to do with Swedish students moving over to the Asian region. We're obviously familiar with the Tokyos and the Seouls and the Singapores as being important innovation hubs. But what our research is highlighting is the real rise of China, how its primary cities are building quite deep innovation ecosystems, often through their real estate. It's not just about Shanghai and Beijing, but places like Shenzhen, Hangzhou, Nanjing. And Shenzhen, I think, from my perspective, is the city to watch. It is building a very vibrant, innovation-based community. It's possibly unique in this, or at least I think it's unique in the sense that it's one of the few innovation hubs around the world that's not anchored by a major university. And it's sort of highlighting the widening and the diversity of the innovation geographies around the world, and that we might be surprised about where the next innovation hubs are, whether it's Nairobi, sort of in the Silicon Savannah as it's called, or Medellin in Colombia, or Guiyang in China. There is opportunity there for them to leapfrog the normal process of developing an innovation economy, and real estate is providing a key contribution to that.
Thank you very much.
A few comments on the sort of evolving geography of innovation.
Ah, interesting. Miguel, I'm going to come to you in a second, but before I do that, just want to prompt to you, you are the future. You are shaping the future. I'm needing at least 60 messages on Slido, please. Just what do you take today? There was one clear message you feel ought to be resonating from this forum, Future Cities conference today. What would that be? So have a little tap and a think. What message do you think has most grabbed you, or do you think most needs to be shared from this forum? So Miguel Gamino, Executive Vice President and Head of Global Cities at Mastercard. You're obviously doing a lot of thinking about the shaping of cities, transactions within them, etc. Interesting, great to have you with us. Interesting to have one or two thoughts from yourself about our whole agenda today and how things are moving forward.
Sure. So first of all, most of it's already been said. So delighted actually that there's a pretty consistent message that I think this really does have to center around people. I think it needs to be a little less talking and a little more walking in that respect, to be really candid with you, which is a little bit of what Ger, I think, expressed. And he and I worked together as former colleagues when I was on the cities space, so very familiar with the challenges there. And I think also what was touched on, so first of all, I think this whole smart cities thing, I don't know, we've written, I don't know how many posts or whatever about the death of that phrase would be great. Yeah. Mostly because it doesn't mean anything because it means anything. Mm-hmm. And the other bit, I think, is that cities, in my view, have been getting smarter for centuries. This is a phase that we happen to exist in of that evolution, and we think that technology, as you mentioned, Ger, that technology is just some kind of new thing. It's just the version of it is the version that we are experiencing. But it has lived before us and it will live after us. And I think the concept of cities getting smarter is a journey, not a destination. It's not a badge that you earn one day that you put on your website and consider something accomplished. It's a continuous journey. I think some cities are getting it better than others. I think the opportunity there, you mentioned a couple points from the World Bank perspective that are actually literally written in our inclusive urbanization narrative around driving kind of three things, which is efficiency, economic activity or growth, and making sure that both of those things happen in an inclusive manner to make sure that they're sustainable and that they strengthen communities and economies and don't weaken them. which is some of what I think we've seen in, not just in the US, but in lots of parts of the world. So I think all of that to say, it is about putting people at the center. It is about leveraging what I call the superpower of collaboration that exists with cities. And that was what I was mentioning is literally my day job now, mostly because when I was in a job similar to Ger's, I never had a line item in my budget, you probably don't, that says partner with other cities, X million dollars, we'll call it, right? I chose to, as Ger
Going
did,
abroad again, again in the airplane.
So Ger and I know each other because we were similar in that vein, in that we, I think, put our own personal energy and resources, frankly, into establishing connections with other cities, because we recognized that we weren't, while we sometimes in the throes of city hall discussions believe that we're the only city trying to solve urban mobility or housing or pick your thing. In fact, when you lift your head and look outside City Hall, you realize that every other city on the planet is facing the same, we'll call it 10 things, maybe 4, right. If you really kind of think about it holistically.
That's so right. I mean, even when we was in a meeting with 10 of our colleagues not too long ago, and then everybody's doing open source software and put it on GitHub, and then everybody was bragging about how many repositories they had, et cetera, et cetera. And then I asked, some of you took a look at somebody else's open software, actually, and nobody did.
Right.
So we're putting out everything, but nobody looks at other cities because we're doing better at all.
Yeah.
We're different.
Absolutely. So we have a program, and this is not a commercial, but a response, frankly, to the conversation. When I joined Mastercard, it was to establish and build a strategy that is centered around this superpower of collaboration. I guess they read my tweet once or twice. And so we've got a program called City Possible that is really about creating the venue of trust and expertise to accomplish what Ger just described, to accomplish that collaboration opportunity so that we are accomplishing efficiencies and economic growth and inclusivity and all of those sorts of things, but we're doing it at a way that has at least a chance of scale and impact globally. Because I also agree with Ger that there are plenty of resources, and in the cities I worked for, the budgets were big enough. We just spent them on things I wish we didn't have to. And so I think it is about resources being limited or constrained, but not necessarily because there's not enough in aggregate. And so getting cities together, I think, helps accelerate that, because to Ger's point, if they've already built something and city number 2 is trying to accomplish the same goal, they should stand on his shoulders, not recreate what he's already built, and vice versa. And we had, I don't know, dozens and dozens of examples globally that we accomplished that. So we are trying at Mastercard to try to facilitate that, so that, because we recognize, or I recognize that there isn't a line item in any city's budget that is to accomplish that on their own. And so rather than leave it to chance, we feel like it's important to structure it and to organize it. And so we've got 30 cities so far, or almost 30 cities so far, signed into this program officially. We've got several hundred in the process of doing that. But then beyond the city's superpower of collaboration among themselves, I also think it is extremely important to involve the private sector, the academic community, and the NGOs. I'm liberal with that term, to include think tanks, but also true NGOs that are in this space. But they should be, I believe, my belief is that they should be supportive networks to the core network of cities, because the city is, in theory, the lens to the people that live in it. And it's actually, it's not even about the cities at the core, it's about the people in those cities at the core, but that's the best lens into it. Right. And so I think if we do that, then we start to mobilize these solutions much more quickly. And I think we also build kind of the triple victory, or the triple bottom line, where we can actually deliver to a city a more efficient operation, where they are saving money or building more capacity, doing more with less. We are doing that in a way that delivers a better service or a better outcome to the people that are consuming that service, whether it's transit riders, housing residents, or whoever the public service consumer is. And then thirdly, and this was hard when I was in City Hall, frankly, but thirdly, it's really important to involve the private sector for the purpose of not only kind of expertise and resource access in the early stages, but what I used to tell mayors that I worked for, and I tell mayors now, is someone's got to protect the good work you've done. Someone's got to protect the legacy going forward, because when I was in City Hall, there was a date on the calendar by which we would no longer yield or wield power. Right? And so we could use budget and policymaking to set off a trajectory towards a goal. And if we were really good, we could actually accomplish some of those goals in the time we had in office. But I believe if you involve the private sector in a socially, civic, impactful, focused way, then, and you do it in a way that is commercially viable for that private sector partner, now you've got someone who is, by design, going to not only protect the legacy or the impact that you've created, but continue to accelerate it, grow it, expand it, protect it, innovate it in the future, because they're intrinsically motivated to do so. So that's, I think, starting from the macro of this, I think collaboration is the way to innovate governing or to accomplish acceleration in progress that smart cities or cities on a smarter path want to accomplish. But I think you have to involve those other segments to make sure that you're doing it in a comprehensive, sustainable, robust way.
Right. Okay, fascinating. Really interesting things. And a lot of what you're saying is resonating with some of the comments coming out as our final impactful messages. I'm going to read a few of them out. And as I read one out, if you want to augment the reality here, then then just give me a shout, all right? But just to give a flavor of some of the stuff that's emerging, interesting, top of our favorites is, shouldn't we have someone from civic movements or citizen science groups participating in today's discussion? Yes, probably, yes.
No, I didn't. I was commenting about this.
Because everybody always says yes, and then we're gonna find a professional participant to represent. I mean, it's almost like a politician, basically. So who to involve at what moment, and this is interesting. And we still think of a traditional way of how we organize our democracy and everything, basically. I mean, we used to, well, I'm doing the podcast again, I realize again, sorry. But the interesting thing, we invented democracy when people would go to parliament with their horse, basically, and stay there for 4 years, vote, and go back with their horse and have elections again. Mm-hmm. But it's obviously pretty stupid that you have the same group of people have discussions about very complex things, while you actually want to put in specialists and involve citizens, et cetera, et cetera. So we're in the digital age, we're online the whole day, where everything is flexible. But government still does things in with a 4 years election. That's the only feedback loop we have, actually, elections. And then imagine having a website with a 4-year feedback loop. But that's what we do. And then we never involve people. We involve people, ask them something, but it's more or less at random. There's no structure behind it, no idea behind it. It's 3 months consultation when we do a building project, and then we start to build it 5 years later. And then, obviously, time has changed, but we don't do it. So I think we should redesign this process as well. I mean, this is not having current process involve a bit more citizens in what we do. We should redesign the process and how we manage a city, how we involve citizens, how we involve experts,
right.
How we involve, etc. So we always say yes, but we would now need to invite somebody representing the urban community.
Right.
What? I mean, who?
Okay. I'll throw another one in. It says, how can cities keep with the pace of change? So this is, extraordinary evolutions, developments. We should just relax. It's just how it happens, or how do we keep pace with change?
So this is well, how can we not need to is different than how do you, right? But absolutely, I think that again the reason I coined this phrase superpower of collaboration was when I entered the public sector, having come from my startup days. which was hyper competitive. And then I got into the public sector, and I realized, wow, I could pick up the phone and call someone in another city and they would send me source code. That was foreign to me coming from a competitive environment. And that's really what triggered, that's literally, I said it to myself in my head. Sometimes I speak to myself out loud, but I try not to.
He does.
That I felt like this was actually a superpower because, brand A and B, we'll just pick on Coke and Pepsi, are probably not going to share a room very often, much less code. Yet, when I was in San Francisco, we had great success with building a business portal that got a bunch of awards and a bunch of attention, and we spent a bunch of money and a bunch of time building it. And it got so much attention that the mayor of Los Angeles down the road wanted the same for his citizens, as he should. And he went to his CIO, CTO, and said, I want the same outcome. So he had a choice. He could have either gone the same path as me, spent the same money in the same time, or he could have picked up the phone or sent an email. And I'm speaking semi-metaphorically, but this is a real story. So they called us, they called the office, and the typical level of partnership or collaboration is one calls the other and says, what vendor did you use? Were they good and bad? What were the best, give me their best practices, your lessons learned type of thing. Something you can put in an email or you can attach some things to. And we stepped it up and we said, how about this? We'll put the source code on GitHub and you can have it. And that was, at least at that time, like a foreign concept. If you go to Los Angeles website, if you go to their business portal today, and I use this story often, so I check it fairly regularly. If you go to the footer of their business portal today, it's credited as an open source project with San Francisco. Now, I don't know if you all know anything about the West Coast and the competition or the posture. LA and San Francisco can't agree on anything. But the fact that we were high-fiving each other was also proof that not only did cities possess this superpower, but at the technical level, there was so much need and demand and need to accelerate without resources to all of us do it on our own, that it was a requirement. That if you weren't a CIO or CTO who was picking up the phone or answering the phone and sharing with each other, you were probably not going to be a CIO or CTO in a city for very long because you weren't going to be able to keep up with what was being demanded of you and what was going on. So in some ways, it was a forced issue. But the answer to the question is collaboration is the way that you accelerate and even have a chance at meeting, much less keeping up with the acceleration of consumer expectation.
Hazem, you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it back to something maybe a little bit mundane, but it's a very important success factor, which is some of the procurement laws that we currently have within local governments. I mean, if we really want to enable the private sector participation early on, we would need to re-examine, when do we bring them on? I mean, I think someone mentioned, about bringing them early on in the process. And I recall in 2016, as part of the WEF for the New Urban Agenda, we did an analysis about, if you look at the whole life cycle of a project, typically the private sector is brought in, not during the planning, not during the design, but pretty much during the funding and operation phase of the cycle. And we really need to go back to something which is very basic in terms of how do we procure urban services? How can we make sure that if we're designing a proof of concept with a private sector, startup or a company, that this is okay, and then there is sort of like a regulatory framework that would allow for this early involvement, because that's how we keep up. That's how we, make sure that as a city, we're able to reinvent ourselves, leveraging that innovation from the private sector through something as mundane as procurement.
Yeah, I agree. Procurement is boring, but really, really important and often an impediment. So I think that's absolutely something that has to be addressed to help cities take advantage of that opportunity.
I would say laws are not the biggest problem. I mean, it's people who do procurement within municipalities who the only thing they talk about is risks, basically. I mean, I think more and more, and there are ways. I mean, you can organize competitions. Example given. I mean, it's very common for buildings that you do organize a competition how the building looks like. You can also do this for startups, for technology. Startup residence program. We stole from San Francisco when you were there as well with Jay. I mean, what we do is put an issue to the market basically, and say, well, we want to have better health for elderly people, whatever. Come on with your pitch. You pitch to us, and then we say, hey, let's take 6 months to define the program. I mean, you can do that within every law everywhere in the world almost, but our procurement officers are just doing their little process, risk avoiding, making complicated. Interesting thing is, in the last startup round, in the startup residence program, where 15 companies joined whatever, for the story, it doesn't matter. 50 companies joined the last round. None of them knew that they were part of a European tender, because we just made a slide deck on top with a nice interface on top of the European procurement forms, basically. But it looked nice with pictures and everything. So they didn't realize that it was an official European procurement, but it was. And they could do a pitch, and we could say, hey, we let us try it for 3 months, and then we decided we're going to buy it, yes and no. So the interesting thing is, we didn't know what to procure. We didn't have a challenge. We didn't know what to procure. We needed to do, a decent way, but we redesigned it a bit. And they include actually quite a bit. Problem is, governments want to be in the same process, being controlled, should be an SAP system controlling it, et cetera, or Oracle, whatever traditional vendor. But nowadays, I would say you can do quite a bit in procurement processes, but you really need to look at.
There's a question here, or a thought, which I'd just like to make a comment. Maybe Abby want to contribute to this one. It says, do cities have a strong vision as to what they want to be in 20 to 30 years from now? Or are they guided through short-term objectives linked to political mandates? And are we sort of muddling through? Right. Or is the day of a vision of 30 years time crazy because the world's changing at a topsy world? Just interested in that lack of a sense of where we need to be in 30 years time, so that we are shaping in that direction. Do you want to offer a comment on that? Yeah,
actually, it's a fantastic question, because what we don't or talk about or miss talking about or skip is the role of city leadership. And when we talk about city leadership, that's where vision and strategic planning beyond your 4 or 5 year election cycle kicks in. We had this favorite quote where the deputy mayor of Barcelona, once when he was presiding over a smart city expo thing in Barcelona, said, you can't have a smart city with a stupid mayor. And that clearly puts the role of city leadership, square and center into how a city evolves. But I also want to say that, since we were talking about procurement and the whole idea is about governance, long-term strategic planning, vision, prioritization is a part of governance. It's a very important part of governance, along with more tedious parts like procurement and transparency, lack of corruption, a culture of integrity, which is formal and informal, which runs through the government. All of that is very important, but I think leadership is where it starts. And it's sometimes we say it's not easy to say what's going to happen in 2050, 2030. We have certain hardwired facts. We know that the world would be almost 75% urbanized by 2050. Most of this is going to happen in the global south, Africa, Asia, and so on. But how do you think beyond when actually we haven't even been able to solve some of our existing problems of huge urbanization? Urbanization is the leading phenomena of this, or defining phenomena of this century. And when we were talking about resources and resource constraints, I mean, think of cities where, for example, 11 people settle every hour in Lagos. So how do you find those infinite resources? Even if you look at where are we wasting and where are we not wasting, where 70% of your housing is actually informal housing, 80% of the city's economy is informal. How do you actually put in sewage lines and water treatment plants and provide mass transit for people? So some of these challenges are not going to disappear by 2030, 2040, 2050, but we can think today that we have so much more that we can harness because of technology, because of this leapfrogging that is happening. And can we use that leapfrogging in technology to leapfrog development?
Right.
No.
Can I add one more thing maybe? Because we don't know how 30, 40 years ahead looks like. I mean, we don't know that. I mean, it's like I can Google, what are you going to do in 30 years?
It's about 3 meters deep in water.
Ridiculous question. But we do know, when you don't know the future, there's one thing you can do, is making sure you're agile, adaptive, and resilient.
Right.
Yeah.
So make sure you find an, we say, yeah, but this is not what governments tend to do. We still draw pictures of Amsterdam in 2038 and 2060, basically. I mean, nobody focuses on, hey, how can we become more agile and adaptive to this change? So obviously, you need to have some kind, you need to make decisions sometimes. But you also, I mean, when you build a road for, my planner colleagues say you build a road for 100 years. Yeah, when you do it as you do, yeah. But maybe we should do that a bit different, so it can be a cycling lane or a motorway or even, you need to be more flexible.
Right.
And this is when you talk about future cities. I mean, they're about flexibility, software controlling stuff, data, short feedback loops, etc. Gonna happen. So make sure you're adaptive, agile, resilient.
Our time is almost up. I just want to come along the panel for just one, if there was one unexpected and crazy thing you were going to say into this. We've been pummeling urban intelligence in all sorts of directions through the day. Fascinating range of discussions. But I'm just wondering if there was one maybe final message, maybe something slightly left field, something not obvious, that maybe should be ringing in our ears as we head for a small glass of apple juice at the end of the afternoon, that maybe would make this community, which has got a lot of students, researchers, people trying to shape that urban intelligence agenda, maybe just a jolt to make us think in a slightly different way. Sorry, I've put the bar pretty high, but you're an amazing group of people. Miguel, what would you offer?
So I think it's two things. One, I'm also going to answer your last question at the same time a bit. I think it is a combination of the near term and the long term. I think when you're talking about systems and roads and technologies, thinking about that in a 30-year projection is impossible. I don't know about you, but I'm not smart enough to predict that, and I don't know that anyone even at Google is smart enough to predict that, to your point. But, so I think there are some near-term things you can do, setting up flexibility, agility, responsiveness, partnerships, all of those sorts of things that we talked about, I think are in the near-term frame. And I think the political reality of people getting reelected is something that can be a strength if it's mobilized correctly. In the 30-year frame or beyond, I think we should be thinking and recognizing the role of cities. Actually, I think it was my former colleague on the previous panel mentioned the rise of cities in terms of importance, right? Cities, mayors now are required to address things like immigration and climate change, and they still have to pick up the trash and pave the roads. I think we collectively have to lean into that reality and figure out how to mobilize resources to handle that. But those are the kinds of macro things we can predict that will continue. Urbanization is going to have an impact into 30, 40 years. That is something that we can predict because everything is showing us that the impact of those sorts of things on the economy and the community, or even the sense of what is community going forward. We're seeing the pendulum swing back off of digital into real, right? I think the reality that the balance is really important. So anyway, the point is, it's those big things that you can't walk outside and see that are the things we should collectively be paying attention to that will have profound impact in the longer horizon.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Jeremy, a brief left field thought.
Perhaps just a word about the not an insignificant sort of 3 billion people that live in emerging cities or in the global south, or however to describe them. And as Professor Birch highlighted with the example of Accra, in most of those cities, the level of real estate transparency on ownership, on building controls is extraordinarily low. And so I'm just thinking of the opportunity there for technological advancements to be able to contribute to improving real estate transparency and improving the quality of life of going on 2 to 3 billion people.
Okay. Yeah, one-liner from you.
I would say we need to do...
I live in hope.
We stop to improve stupid things and start to do the right things.
Ah, I love it. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Hazem.
By definition, all the urban problems are multidisciplinary. So my call to action for the group is the wider disciplines you can engage with your colleagues, the more likely you are going to be successful in coming up with innovative solutions.
Right. Love it. And finally, Abha.
I think everything that had to be said has been said by this eminent group, and all I would say is that as we move forward, that we should keep inclusion and collaboration very much at the center of this journey of urban intelligence and the rise of cities as the new power, as the new global power.
Brilliant. Thank you all very much indeed. You have brought us beautifully to a close. We've got some great thoughts and ideas that have come through, and you can read them on your own Slido. But for now, can we say a huge thank you to our panel for drawing things to a close? And really just to bring it all to a close, just from me, just a big thank you to all our speakers, all our panelists, for conforming to a crazy time schedule, but hopefully within that time schedule we've created some interesting ideas and some great value. I'd really just like to pass back to Asaf and Alice to offer some closing words.
So, first of all, thank you to each and every one of you for coming today and for being so engaged in the discussion. And certainly from our perspective, there's so many takeaways that we're going to take from today. But I think one of the things that I heard is that we have a number of things to do if we're going to get innovation and technology to scale. And one of the central things that I heard over and over again today is we first of all need to define the problem correctly. And that requires a multi-stakeholder approach. So for the technologists and innovators in the room, that does not mean sitting in your lab or sitting in your nice office and deciding what the world needs. You actually need to go to these cities and understand their problems, gather the right data, and develop solutions that they need, because cities have very similar problems, but the context is different. So I think it's really, really important that we seek to define the problem and come up with the right solutions. Also, I think what we heard over and over again is that we need the right enabling environment. So we need agile governance, and we need procurement models that's going to fit as well. But we also need finance. So if we are going to realize the SDGs and the Paris Agreement and the New Urban Agenda, there's a very significant infrastructure gap that needs to be bridged. So we need to find ways of getting finance to where it's needed. So how do we channel funds to cities? And I think that's really important. And finally, the other thing that I heard consistently is we need partnerships. And to pick up on a point by Hazem around the urban value chain, throughout the urban value chain, whether it's at the planning stage, the design stage, the implementation stage, the financing stage, the monitoring stage, we need all partners at the table. So I just want to encourage public-private collaboration. So finally, I just want to say a massive thanks to MIT, to the lab, and there's a few people I have to sort of mention who've just been extraordinary. Rachel, who's hiding. So the reality is none of this would be possible without Rachel. She had so many calls set up. There was so much logistics. So thank you, Rachel. Also, I need to thank Jackie, who has just started but has been involved from the very beginning. To Fabio, to all our fire starters, to Asaf, to Carlo, who refused to come up. But thank you to Carlo, and just to everyone at the lab. And from the World Economic Forum side, where is Sophia? I don't see her. She's hiding somewhere. There she is at the very back, hiding. Again, from my side, none of this could be possible without the help of Sophia. So thank you very much to Sophia. So thank you, everybody, and wishing you a very safe journey. And I hope you stay for the drinks.
Thanks. I was going to add a couple of thanks. I'm not going to say anything other than thank you. I think you covered most people. First of all, we want to thank you, Alice, and the World Economic Forum. It's been great to partner with you on this, and I think this day was revealing for me, and I hope for the others as well. So you mentioned Rachel and Jackie, really tremendous work. Just a quick note. Tom from Sensible City Lab did tremendous work here. And also all the researchers from Sensible City Lab who contributed in volunteering this morning. People woke up super early after going to sleep drunk, and we know it's tough. So really remarkable feat. Everybody worked super hard. The Broad Institute for letting us be here. Yeah. So if there's anybody here from the Broad, thank you. And I believe we covered everything. Thanks. Peter. Of course. You're the first on the list, and I didn't say it. Peter, you're amazing. Yeah. Hope to see you here next time with us. Thank you very much.